You are listening to the So Now What podcast with lanamanikowski, episode number 135.
So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us.
Oh, wow. It has been a big week in the media. I think it's very important to be in full integrity as a life coach and as somebody who supports women who are creating a path to a life without children. I never want there to be a stance on any sort of politics. And I think it's really important that whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, independent, liberal, however you identify, that what you come to my page or what you listen to this podcast for is not about a political agenda. However, today I'm going to talk about the fact that there is a common myth that women who are childless are miserable. And if you're listening to this podcast episode wanting it to become political, it's not going to be. It's just not where I'm at. I at one time loved politics. You might not know that I lived in Washington, D.C. for 5 years, and I worked in the White House back in the 90s. So I understand a thing or two about politics. But when I decided to become a life coach, I decided to kind of turn that part of the volume down in my life. And also with the news, I very rarely watch the news anymore. Some people have accused me of living in a bubble, and I gladly say I am, and I appreciate living in my bubble because I allow in and bring in the things that I want to surround myself with. Do I care about the future of this country? Absolutely. But is me watching CNN, News Nation, Fox News, wherever it is that you can go get your news, is me watching and consuming from there going to make the change in my life and in my future that I care about? And the answer is no. So I am a reformed political and news junkie who cares about the future of this country and more so cares about the way that women who are childless are viewed, not only by the people in this country, but how we view ourselves. So if you're up for listening to this and want to hear my view on things, settle right in and let's get started on this week's episode of the podcast. So, of course, I felt very disappointed to hear not only the political statements that were made some years ago, but to hear how they were reframed after certain people were questioned about believing that women who are childless are miserable. I clearly disagree with that because I don't view myself as a miserable person. But I more so want to talk this week about why society has become okay with believing that being childless is an automatic, like, this is who you become. I think that there's an idea that childless women are miserable. And I think that that's a myth. And I think that the stereotype often stems from these societal expectations that equate a woman's worth and her happiness to being able to have children. And maybe we played into that for a portion of our lives. That's probably why we went through fertility treatments and why we tried so hard to become moms. However, many women who aren't moms, whether it's by choice or not by choice, go on to lead rich, fulfilling lives that have a ton of meaning and a ton of purpose. That's what I talk about every week here on the podcast. So this should be nothing new if you have listened to this podcast for a while. But the assumptions that childlessness equals unhappiness fails to recognize like this diverse way in which people find meaning and fulfillment in their lives. I don't think that meaning and purpose is linear. I think that we find it in many different ways. I mean, I talked about my episode on purpose just a few weeks ago. Like, I don't believe that purpose comes from one singular thing. I think that purpose is laid out through the way that we live our lives and the way that we view our lives. Being childless after infertility, there are going to be times that you feel miserable. And some people have reached out to me being like, gosh, like, I do feel miserable. And hearing political statements be made about women who are childless after infertility being miserable may have you believing that you are doing something wrong. And so I want to clarify that there are going to be moments that life feels miserable. You're figuring this out, like things turned out differently than you thought it would. So there are going to be moments that don't feel like rainbows and daisies, and that is okay. There are moments in my life where some things happen and it feels really crummy. And I don't have to question whether I am doing life after infertility wrong if there are moments in my life that don't feel joyous and happy all the time. And so I really think that it's important for you to acknowledge that not being able to have children can be certainly a profound source of sadness or misery at times in your life. And that is okay. You're not doing something wrong. You're not playing into the societal norm that you are a miserable person. You are just having some not so happy moments every once in a while. And these feelings are totally valid and normal. And understand that you can feel sadness or misery, and it can coexist with feeling super proud and happy about who you are. What I want to point out is that it's really crucial to understand that it's experiencing these emotions doesn't mean that you're destined to feel miserable forever. Life is full of complexities. Life is full of good and bad. There's like this 50-50. If life doesn't feel 50-50, like some good, some bad, we are accustomed to thinking that we are doing life wrong. But the reality is, life is supposed to feel good sometimes and bad sometimes. But we have this idea that we're supposed to be happy all the time. Because if we don't have things that happen that feel really hard and feel really sad and feel really lonely, then we don't have any contrast in our life. We don't know how to get more of what we want, because if we had what we wanted all of the time, like how boring would that be? We would never strive for more because we would always be on this coast mode. And if we're not feeling a variety of emotions in our day, then I would start to question if things are not going the way that they should be going in your life. Fulfillment doesn't come from one singular source. We talked about that, a lot here in the last couple of weeks in the podcast. Children can't, and becoming a mom can't be the only source of happiness in one's life. And I know that we have been brought up in the society, and maybe we saw other people in our lives lead with that type of narrative, but there's absolutely no way that the only way that you can find meaning and purpose in your life is through having a child. And it can be found in relationships. It can be found in hobbies that you explore. It could be found in career milestones and things that you are doing for your personal growth. And many women find joy in friendships, in connecting with others. Like, there's just so many countless ways that you can find fulfillment and happiness in your life. And I just think that there's too many people who have hung their hat on thinking that the only way to find this meaning and fulfillment in their life is through children. I think it's really important that in a time like this, if you are feeling miserable because your dream of motherhood did not come true and everything that you tried didn't seem to work out in the way that you wanted it to, this is your time to decide, how much longer am I willing to feel this way if this is taking up more than just like moments every once in a while in your life. If you're feeling like, I just can't get out of this rut, this is your time to wake up and be aware that this isn't the person that you want to be all the time. So where are you going to find that? Last week on the episode, we talked about where to find communities. Is it a meetup group? Is it through social media? Is it through joining something like my Thrive After Infertility Mastermind, where you're finding this community for yourself and then creating growth with other women who want to grow? But knowing that there has to be this step that you are willing to take in order to really go after this life that you love, to prove all these people wrong that believe that life is miserable when you're childless will take a lifetime. There is no one person that can convince these people who have been believing this for way too long that we are different. The most important thing that you can do is show yourself that you're different. Find this life that you want to love and go after it. Don't be paralyzed by your fear of thinking that it won't happen for you. It will happen for you. You are so deserving of this life that you love. And if you're feeling like you don't have it yet, now is your time to decide that you are worth it. But the only way that you're going to be able to really get to this place of feeling connected to yourself is by stopping judging yourself if you're not feeling joy and meaning and purpose 24/7, and recognizing that there is a full spectrum of emotions. And it's important to remember that it's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel a range of emotions. It's okay to feel miserable some days. It's okay to feel judged some days. And it's okay to grieve or feel moments of sadness. And it's also okay to find your fulfillment in other areas of your life. And you don't have to choose between being happy or sad. And that is like the biggest aha moment, that you can coexist with being happy and sad. So I hope that you really take an opportunity to believe that this stance that we are taking against comments that women who are childless are miserable, it's really important that you look at yourself in the mirror and know that you are worth every moment of happiness that comes in your life. And if everything worked out differently than you thought it would, that you aren't doing life wrong, but that there is more that you can find in your life to discover and live this life that feels happy and true to you and feels fulfilling to you. And maybe, yeah, there's some days and hours and moments that don't feel great, but in order to create this life you love, you have to allow yourself to lean into what feels true for you. And if you know that life isn't meant to feel miserable forever, then now is your time to create a life that you love. So I hope that you have a beautiful week. I love you. And remember that it's never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week.